Simple message from Liz Leavitt today. Sound okay? I'll start by telling you that one of the things I have appreciated about being a parent to a young child is the opportunity to relearn all the things I was taught in childhood and totally forgot about. Let me say, as an aside, isn't the sheer volume of stuff we have forgotten like staggering? Do you think about that? I've forgotten so much stuff, it's just unbelievable. I've forgotten the Spanish word for laughter. I've forgotten the quadratic equation. I've forgotten the capital of Paraguay. I've forgotten the name of my 7th grade English teacher. But I could go on forever. It's amazing. But now I'm getting to relearn some of that stuff as my kids learn it. I'll probably forget it again, but for now it feels really cool. Oliver especially likes to watch these educational videos on YouTube that are, I swear, the catchiest jingles you have ever heard. Days later, you'll just be chopping onions like, and the cleverest animations about all sorts of stuff like math concepts and earth science terms and geography and emotions and colors. Now, a lot of the ones we watch are about space because that's one of his interests. And I now, for instance, know the name of the 5 dwarf planets and the process by which a star is born. See me after the service if you want to learn either of those things. But my favorite video that he's discovered thus far is about the moon. I don't know why, it's just so captivating. I sing this song myself all the time about the moon. It's a little animated moon that kind of floats around and sings this kind of melancholy song about itself, while slyly teaching you facts about the moon. I was going to sing it to you, but I'm not going to today. I'm just going to say, have you thought about the moon recently? Oh, okay, good. It's important. We got to think about the moon. Have you thought about how it's just orbiting up there and has been for millions and millions and millions of years, and how it was probably created when a body the size of Mars crashed into Earth during its early formation, and the debris from this impact coalesced into the moon? Have you thought about that? Gabe, you're stealing the show, man. I love it. Be careful, man. The fields know all my science stuff. I try to surprise people with science stuff, and the field kids are always like, well, then, did you know that scientists have named that hypothetical object Theia, in case you need something else to forget later, after the Greek goddess believed to be the one from whom all light proceeded? And that the moon itself has received its share of interstellar impacts, large meteors that have struck over time, creating the moon's observable craters. Can you name any of them? Tycho, Burgess, Kepler. Any of those ring a bell? Okay, just look up at night. You're going to start to see this stuff. Even today, mini meteors and other tiny objects continue to shower down on the moon, kicking up the dust. It's called regolith dust that covers the moon's surface. And when these micrometeors hit the moon, especially in places where that dust is very shallow, this is a new discovery, they actually release some of the limited water molecules that have been found on the moon. Cool, huh? We used to think the moon was totally dry. It's not. Are you aware that the moon is actually moving away from us all the time, every year, a few centimeters? Think where we'll be in 100 million years. Have you thought about how the Earth's orbit and rotation have the same period, which is why we're always looking at the same side of it, right? It's turn. I tried to do that with a tennis ball just now while I was writing the sermon this morning, but I couldn't really. The moon's orbiting and rotating at the same time, which is why, as the kid said, you can only see one side. Have you thought about how the moon's surface is actually dark, but the sun is so bright its reflection makes it look light? Well, how about this? Have you been thinking about the phases of the moon? New, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full, waning gibbous, third quarter, and waning crescent. Could you name those as you look up in the sky? Did you know that the phases of the moon look different in the northern and southern hemisphere? Yes. Oh, just trying to keep it real here, right? For instance, our waxing crescent appears like a slit on the right side of the moon, but if you're in Australia, it looks like a slit on the left side of the moon, which is pretty cool. Which reminds me that I should probably say something about the transfiguration right here, because I'm assuming that's why you all came today, not just to do moon facts. But you guys are really up on moon trivia. Maybe next week we'll do the sun. What I want to say about the transfiguration is, wasn't it, isn't it, a little bit like looking up at the moon. What I mean to say is that in the Gospels you have these little theophanies, right? That's a cool theological word we can remember and then forget again. It means a visible or tangible manifestation of God. The burning bush, a theophany. We have these little theophanies in the Gospel where God's presence or voice kind of breaks into the story, okay? And now in Mark, there are 3 of these, and they're thought to be important pillars upon which the whole story of Mark unfolds. The first one of them is at Jesus' baptism. The second one is here at the Transfiguration. The third one is at the crucifixion. Now these are the places in the story where strange things happen, right? Doves appear, light or darkness falls, garments shine or are rent, voices are heard coming from the beyond. Now, these are really important moments in Mark's gospel, and this is an insight from David Jacobson at Boston University School of Theology. They reveal the divine mystery active behind the events of the gospel. So these times allow us as readers to understand more of where the story is heading, even if the characters in the story, the disciples especially, can't understand it. Jacobson says of these little apocalyptic visions, we are seeing in them something deeply true, yet only in the process of becoming revealed. So the curtain's pulled back a little bit, and we're seeing something deeply true, yet only in the process of being revealed. Now, interestingly, these theophanies in Mark, at least, come at increasingly challenging points of the story, right? So the first one's at Jesus' baptism. Remember that? We talked about that a few weeks ago. The river, the dove, this is my beloved, that whole thing. Yes? It's like 3 of you remember. 100 of you remember that there's some things on the moon, and 1 of you remembers what I talked about 3 weeks ago. That's crazy. All right, so the first theophany happens at Jesus' baptism, and God speaks. And this has a kind of like happy kickoff energy from Mark, right? This is like, Jesus is about to start his ministry. Wahoo, it's going to be great. And then Jesus gathers his disciples, and they do some healing and teaching, and everybody's really grateful, and the crowds are gathering, right? But by the time we get to the Transfiguration, the second theophany, things are getting a little bit more difficult. Jesus has started talking about his impending suffering and death, and it wasn't sounding like such a party anymore for those that were close to him. The disciples had started to argue and vie for top position among Jesus' followers, and even as Peter, James, and John are on the mountaintop, the other disciples are down below trying to heal this boy who his father believes is possessed by a demon, and they can't do it. And they're getting frustrated and discouraged, right? Times are tough. And then this vision of God appears, right? Jesus communing with his ancestors, and a voice again saying, "This is my child, listen to him." And of course, if you read on, not too many more chapters, the third theophany comes at Jesus' crucifixion, a torn curtain in the temple, darkness descending, the voice of somebody nearby, surely this was God's Son. An even more difficult moment. And so the takeaway from this is that throughout these arduous points on the journey to resurrections, God's mini revelations continue. That's the big revelation. These mini revelations continue. In the words of the Reverend Dr. Martha Simmons, the creator of the African American lectionary, these eschatological visions are where the sweet by and by meets the nasty here and now. But she says these are not just apparitions, right? They're not just visions, they're actually forms of encouragement. These glimpses of the holy are meant to strengthen the disciples, and through them us, for the work of discipleship yet to come. To encourage them when failure seems likely and when they are longing again for glory. Now, actually, it's interesting, that word isn't mentioned in this passage, glory. But it is an important aspect of the Transfiguration story, something we assume is there. Glory, biblically speaking, is what emanates from God. It's also what we are meant to reflect as followers of God. Glory, again, using that word with a biblical meaning, is what shines on Jesus at the transfiguration, right? Like Jesus was a prism perfectly positioned for the disciples to see glory shine through. And then as we hear it turns and the glory is no longer visible, but the assumption is it's still there. Gregory Mobley and Frederick Streets, both professors at Yale Divinity School, call this God shine. They said you've heard of moonshine, you've heard of sunshine, this is God shine. And to them, the invitation of this passage is to figure out how to see that, how to see God shine, how to see the light of God. They would prefer to use the term the beauty of God, how to see that without trying to control it, without trying to capture it. Because they say, always, we learn in Scripture, glory is fleeting, but faithfulness is not. Faithfulness is taking whatever vision we have of God, whatever movement in our soul, and then allowing that to inform how we see and experience the rest of the world. And I like that. I can really appreciate that. I mean, I feel like for me, it's like looking at the moon. It's like recognizing every night of our lives is not a full moon. Now, when it is a full moon, what do? We look up and we bask and we wonder and we say, hey, come here, look, it's the full moon. We celebrate. Maybe we dance. I don't know. We sit in awe. We see it. And then we return to our work or to our rest or to whatever we're called to in that moment. And you'll notice, like, then when the new moon comes or a crescent, we don't cling to those realities. We don't try to wish them away. We simply accept them as part of the natural cycle and the beautiful mystery of things, right? We trust in that ongoing and eternal process. The full moon will come again. If we look up to a new moon sky and see only darkness, we don't have trouble believing that the moon is still there, do we? Well, if we look up and see a sliver, we don't think the rest of it's been lost somehow. And it's the same with divine activity, sacred revelation. It's going on all the time. Now, it might be more observable to us at certain moments of our lives and certain seasons. And in those seasons, we're invited to delight and to open our hearts and to revel and to dream and to prophesy. But in the times we cannot sense God's presence palpably, that does not mean it is not there. And faithfulness is about going about our work and our wonder and our rest and our lament and our celebration and our prophetic sharing, nevertheless. I want to say this knowing that we continue to live in very difficult days, right? In times that are, I don't know about you, but certainly testing our hope and testing our resolve to stay engaged fruitfully in a world that continues to feel so broken and so dangerous. I think we're entering another political season that will prove to be discouraging, distancing, and disorienting. The world continues to be filled with violence and hurt and discrimination. Our planet continues to groan under the pressure of climate crisis, and yet here we are. Not only present here, but called to be here. And called to turn ourselves toward God, to stand tall, to reflect the glory of love and mercy such as we are able in each turn. We're called to pay attention, to search for theophanies, places we can see the Spirit active among us, and to use those revelations as hooks upon which to hang our faith. We are meant to trust that God is at work, perhaps in places we cannot yet perceive, or perhaps in ways that seem only partial or faint to us now, but which will come to full fruition if we continue to watch and work. That's the promise. And we come here in order to remember that, because we all know that we are so prone to forgetting, that if we are not reminded, it might slip from our mind that God is with us always, that God is at work. We come here so that we can sing catchy tunes and remember with words and actions the promises that inform these holy and mysterious cycles among us. And we come here so that our divine parent can delight in walking alongside us on this journey of discovery, on seeing with new eyes what is sacred and holy among us and celebrating that together. I think that's the invitation of the Transfiguration. I think it's the invitation for us here always, and I hope we can feel a special call with that today. So I offer those words in the name of the God who did create, redeem, and who sustains us always. Amen.